joining us now. From Washington, D.C., Congressman, brand new father, had a baby. His wife had a baby. So he's being up nights and all that good stuff. Tom Garrett, Congressman, 5th District, Virginia, Republican. Good to have you, Tom.
Well, I dozed off. Sorry. No. John, I want to tell you that I'm marginally triggered. It's Native American summer, not Indian summer. And I just wanted to get that off my chest so that my dander can get down a little bit, because I've been really riled up ever since you created that great affront to all who would use such an egregiously offensive term.
Indian summer, I know. That's we should call it Native American summer. You're right.
I'm just trying to help.
I know you're always trying to keep me straight, and that we were celebrating Columbus Day, and of course we got chided for that it's now Homogenous Americans Day or something. Homogenized Milk Day. I don't know what. I can't really figure the whole thing out. But look, I'll tell
you what, man. I've said it a bunch of times, and I'll say it again. There's two types of people in the world: those who are too busy being offended to be productive, and those who are too busy being productive to be offended. And we can choose which we want to be.
Okay, so much to talk about, so little time. We're going to start, just to aggravate one of my listeners who emailed me and said, stop talking about baseball. I'm not interested. It's the playoffs, so we have to talk about baseball. So I just got to ask you this straight out, right? And then we'll go to all the politics. Like, I cannot believe Washington is not starting Strasburg tonight in Chicago. They got rained out. You got a do-or-die game. Your backs are against the wall. You're on the road. Why wouldn't you throw the best pitcher in the major leagues? What are you waiting for? To play golf?
Well, I think that Strasburg, being that his last name is perhaps German in origin, might be offensive to some people, and therefore, out of greater sensitivity, they've decided not to put him in the game on national television in the spotlight.
That might be it. I tell you what, that is the best answer that I've heard. I have to say that I've heard a lot of answers today via text and everything else, but that is the best answer that I've heard today.
And Stephen, his first name, is also the name of a saint, and it's getting really, really, really unfriendly in here now. So,
all right. Well,
I think if Strasburg were to change his name to Moonbeam, that we might be onto something.
Moonbeam, right? Then he could start. I don't know what is in Dusty Baker's head, but we'll figure it out. Or maybe he'll just shock everybody and change his mind. All right, let's get to the topics of the day. Let's start with Harvey Weinstein. He gave $1.5 million to Democrats recently. Now this guy's been accused of everything under the sun.
Accused? I mean, have you heard the tapes?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say that we were beyond the accusal stage. I think if he didn't know the tapes existed, we would have gotten a little bit more of the vast right-wing conspiracy dogma, the claptrap that worked for so many of those who benefited from his largesse. But this guy is a predator. He's exploited other humans and apparently done so for well over a decade at a minimum. And I'm excited that later today, Governor McAuliffe is going to give back the collective dollars that he's donated to his campaign efforts over the. Oh wait, that's not happening.
No.
So it is what it is. I mean, there are horrible people in the world, and it would appear that Harvey Weinstein has just raised his hand and volunteered to become the latest in a parade of depravity that unfortunately exists in any world where people, and their foibles and shortcomings are allowed to expose themselves.
Well, Tom Garrett, you're a lawyer. We had a question earlier. Why didn't Cyrus Vance, the prosecutor in New York, or wherever he is, he has the tapes, why aren't they bringing Harvey Weinstein up on charges? He said he didn't have enough evidence.
Well, I think there's evidence. I haven't heard the whole tape, but here's what I think supports at least a sexual battery charge. And I don't know the state laws in New York as well as I know them in Virginia. The allegation by the young lady whose name escapes me, who was later wired by the NYPD, that he'd groped her breasts, which would be an unwanted touching, which is a battery by common law, is substantiated by the fact that in the tape that I heard, and again I only heard a portion, he said, and I quote, "I won't do it again," which I would argue as a prosecutor is sufficient to demonstrate an admission, right? So that to me, at the very least, would be evidence sufficient to support a conviction for, at the very least, a misdemeanor sexual battery. And again, I haven't heard all the tapes, but I'll tell you that I would take that one in front of a jury, particularly if the young woman was willing to testify, and we'd have to presume she is, insofar as she went to the NYPD with her claim and was later wired.
Yeah, well, she was wired, right?
Candidly, in this day and age, sadly, justice should be the motive. Protecting other people should be the motive. But sadly, upon sustaining a criminal conviction, her civil case would be perfected, and she could take a little bit of that Weinstein money that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck have been enjoying over these many years.
Well, then it's come out that a lot of people were aware of this, like Affleck knew about it, and others, like it was common knowledge. This was not hidden or isolated incidents, that he had a long history of this, and many of the male actors that were involved with his movie-making companies were quite aware of it and didn't say anything.
Two names that I heard were Damon and Russell Crowe, who allegedly, I can't believe I'm talking about freaking entertainment, who allegedly contacted the New York Times back in 2004 and asked them to kill the story. But, you don't know what you don't know. I'm racking my brain to try to think if ever in my life I've asked somebody to not do something to protect someone I knew when I knew that doing that thing would be the right thing to do, and I can come up with nothing. Short of maybe on the playground saying, please don't tell the teacher that Billy threw a rock.
Right, exactly, right. Or I remember telling my mom many times, oh, come on, don't tell Dad about this. That's right.
Okay, that one I'm guilty of.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that was a mantra of mine. Wait till your father gets home and, oh, come on, Mom, I'll make a deal with you. Don't tell Dad. Like, you hand the punishment out, but, like, don't tell Dad when he goes in the door. I don't want to deal with that. So I do remember that. My father, among other things.
I don't think that rises to the level of please don't run the news story on the serial sexual predator.
I don't either.
I don't think that. Yeah, I don't think that quite rises to the same level.
My father was.
Again, the allegation that he groped this young woman, and then later on tape, him saying when she said she didn't like it, and she'd never had anybody touch her like that unwanted before. His words, "I won't do it again," I think are tantamount to an admission, and I think there's a criminal case there to be made if you want to.
I don't think there's any doubt.
That would bring us around to this.
Right.
Cyrus Vance didn't want to.
That's it. He didn't want to. Of course, he also took a $10,000 donation for his campaign from Weinstein. So, that raises an eyebrow.
Well, at that point, you recuse yourself from the case, right? I mean, at that point, you say, hey, look, I'm conflicted, and I'm going to bring in a deputy who has no relation nor has not benefited from the largesse of this guy. That's easy. That's Prosecutor 101.
So is there a double standard here? I mean, could you imagine if Harvey Weinstein was a Republican, conservative, Trump supporter? Is there a double standard?
Oh, well, I don't know. I'll tell you what. Honestly, regardless of the political leanings of your listenership, I would ask them to ask themselves that. All right, we get the NRA being labeled a terrorist organization. If you know the history of the NRA, it was essentially founded because Union troops had trouble with riflery as compared to their Confederate colleagues, and people died unnecessarily in the fight to free slaves because of it. And the NRA was a private organization that sought to teach marksmanship skills to young Americans that one day they might have less bloodshed on the battlefield. But they've been called a terrorist organization, and there's just complete and utter silence, with the exception of preachy condemnation from people like the Obamas and Clintons, who have taken, and I'm not exaggerating here, untold millions from Weinstein and those who Weinstein solicited to support them.
Untold millions, including Governor McAuliffe. They all took this guy's money, and then Hillary finally, after days, comes out and says, well, she was shocked and appalled by his behavior.
I'm sure she was.
I'm sure she was.
She said that she thought President Trump was creepy because of the allegations that had been leveled against him, but apparently she can still manage to live with Bill.
Evidently, and still take Harvey Weinstein's money. He donated $250,000 to the Clinton Foundation, by the way, which is no longer in existence. And remember, James Carville came on and said, if the Clinton Foundation goes away, then people will die. I guess people are dying now. We just haven't heard about it. Another double.
Well, I think it's funny to imagine what James Carville might have meant by that.
Okay.
There are those who would argue that lots of people have died around the Clintons over the years. I'm not going to go there, but he probably could have picked better words.
Shocked and appalled. Let's get to tax reform, Tom. Where are we? What's happening? And are we going to get this done by Christmas?
Well, a lot of times in the last 9 months that I've been here, I've wondered why. And in the case of health care, it was because of the reconciliation process and the arcane, draconian rules of the Senate. But that's not the only one. I've wondered why we threw everything into a big omnibus piece of legislation and said, hey, here it is, take the good with the bad or else get nothing at all. And I'm afraid that they're going to do the same thing with tax reform. There are elements of tax reform that if they were standalone bills and the Democrats could be trusted to keep their word, would sail through. For example, President Obama acknowledged that our corporate tax structure was one of the least effective and most discouraging to revenue generation and growth and jobs and opportunity in the entire civilized world. So Democrats know there needs to be corporate tax reform. Individual tax reform is where we really start economic growth. You know, Kennedy demonstrated that. Reagan did the same thing Kennedy did. And so aside from things there are bipartisan consensus on, given that 99% of all business is small business, that would be a step in the right direction. But what we've got is this monster, you know, I like to say the road to hell is paved with omnibus legislation. We've got this monster omnibus package that it seems everyone can find something not to like about. The question is how many people are willing to hold their nose and swallow the medicine to get the good benefit thereof. And if it were January, I'd say this thing is a done deal. Constructed by 9 months of observation, my fingers are crossed and I'm hopeful. But I'm not as optimistic as perhaps I would have been.
And then there's no guarantee when it gets to the U.S. Senate that the Senate is going to get 50 votes, right? I mean, there's absolutely no guarantee.
Well, I think right now, and you talked about this, look, Donald Trump is an interesting individual. I think he's probably a little bit vindictive. But I think what's been going on in the Senate, particularly with John McCain, is McCain's gotten his feelings hurt, and he has subrogated the needs of the nation and the responsibilities of his position and what he said he would do when he ran for office in an effort to repeatedly snub Trump from accomplishing anything on the agenda. And again, I'm not going to tell you that Mr. Trump's without blame. I'm going to tell you that Mr. McCain needs to grow up.
Well, he's going to vote no. We know that. And I guess Bob Corker of Tennessee now is going to vote no. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the swamp...
If someone that you cared about was drowning, and that someone would be the American nation, and you had to work with an arch enemy to save them, would you work with the arch enemy to save that someone that you cared about? And the answer should be, for a normal, decent, grounded human being, yes. What we're seeing is the nation's in trouble. Members of the Congress, Senate, and House are tasked with trying to help it within what they believe is the right thing to do, and certainly reasonable people can disagree there. And we're letting personality conflicts and animosity between individuals stymie our efforts to do our job. and you know, I hope that this gets back to Senator McCain. This is going to be his legacy, which is shameful given that the guy, though I might not like everything about him, has had a pretty impressive lifetime of service. His legacy will be a petty personality dispute wherein either he was lying when he ran for office and said these are the things I want to do, or it's a petty personality dispute wherein he allows his personal animosity and hard feelings to stop him from doing the right thing. I wouldn't want that to be a legacy.
Well, look, either way, it's wrong. And you're right. I don't know what exactly is going on there, but you would think that he would put that ahead. But, you know, the other thing you've got, Congressman Garrett, and you know this from being there since January, is right now the swamp controls the tax code. It's 76,000 pages. There's all kinds of goodies in there and tax breaks for certain companies, certain industries, certain people, certain things that people save a lot of money with. It is so complicated, and the swamp wants to protect that because then Republican senators can extort money from lobbyists in order to keep their tax loopholes done. We know what the game is. Look, again, the whole thing's over now when Bob Corker said our job as Republicans in the Senate is to stop the Trump agenda until we can get rid of the guy. I mean, he said it. That's what it is. That's what they're going to attempt to do.
The job-creating class took a month off. Just said, we're taking this month off. The nation would grind to a halt, and you would literally see a 1/12 drop in federal revenue. Why am I going down this road? The reason the tax code is as convoluted as it is because there are a legion of tax attorneys and accountants who need a convoluted tax code such that you and I, the ordinary person, would need their services in order to do something as mundane as it should be, as file taxes. It's complicated because it creates opportunity for specialists who are moneyed, who then ply Congress with that money to try to keep it complicated. Then I come up here and try to simplify the thing and run into a wave of counter by people who essentially perpetuate their power by taking money from the folks who want the tax code to be complicated. But if you circle back around, what we need is some sort of, tax-paying citizens union, right, where we unionize all the people who actually work and produce revenue and pay taxes that run the services of this nation. And if they said, you know what, we're taking our ball and going home for X period of time all at once, it'd be interesting to see what sort of political pressure could be brought to bear.
You sound like Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged. There it is right there. What happened if everybody all the producers and people that work just produce things just said, well, I'm done for a month. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, you're going to simplify the tax code or else we're going to take next week off too.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, it would require that people save some money and make a plan, but that's never been a bad thing.
Never been a bad thing. We're out of time. I want to thank Tom Garrett for being with us and a breath of fresh air, Mr. Candor himself. We're glad you're there. There's hope for America with Tom Garrett in Washington. Thanks for being with us, sir. Always a pleasure. And please give my best to your lovely bride.
We will do it again soon and look forward to seeing you.
I'll see you next week.